I'm definitely leaving that package a sexual part in the video for sure. This is a Denago Rover XL. This is a 2-inch bolt-on hitch receiver for the Denago Rover. And not only does it take just 10 minutes to install with 2 tools, it can handle up to 200 pounds of weight. It's fully adjustable so you can mount it low if you have a license plate, or you can mount it high if you don't. You can purchase it at the link in the description below. But before I show you how easy it is to install this guy, let me show you what makes this guy special. So for starters, it's all American made right here locally in Northwest Ohio. It's American powder coat, it's American steel, so it's all durable, extra strong. It's 1.5 inch by 2 inch tubing on top, 1/8 inch steel here with 1/8 inch gussets welded on the backside, and that's really what gives it its strength. You can mount the receiver on the lowest setting for a license plate. You can mount it on the highest if you don't have a license plate. Then we have the bolt-on receiver piece, chain hook holes for a small trailer or wagon. And then last but not least, which is a big detail actually, is the mounting plates. We do not want to make this just have holes in it where you slide this above the frame and then you're trying to get your hands in a small spot trying to put a nut and a bolt on. We had the nuts welded to the plate. You slide this above, you have your bolts with your washers, and you literally just thread it on. With that being said, that's the end of my sales pitch, so let's install this sucker. Okay, when you get your package sounds sexual. When you get your hitch and you open the box up, you're gonna see you have written instructions with zip ties and all the hardware. You will have your 2 mounting plates, the receiver mount. Then last but not least, the big piece is the whole receiver mounting plate. For the install, you will only need wire cutters to cut the wires for the camera and the license plate light. You will need a 9/16 wrench and either a ratchet with a 9/16 socket or a driver like this with a 9/16 socket. The first step is to cut the wires that are zip tied to the frame underneath the cart. Now, you don't have to have a jack to install this, but for the video purposes on the camera, getting in the angles that you need to see, I'm gonna jack it way up in the air just so you guys can see it better in the video. So we got the cart jacked up now. On the passenger side of the cart of your Rover, you're gonna see there's wires. There should be 2 wires. One's the camera, one's the license plate light. And there's wires right here, zip tied along the frame. We need to cut these zip ties. Make sure you're not cutting the wires. Cut all those so they're free, just hanging out here in the middle. And get those out of the way. You wanna make sure there's no wires zip tied. I don't know if they're gonna change anything, if they build them differently throughout the country, but we always see them on the passenger side. They might also be on the driver's side, I don't know. Just make sure that your 1-inch tubing is completely free of wires, because that's where the hitch mounts down to. Then, the next step is to make sure all of your 2-inch bolts are prepped. What I mean by prepped is that there should be a lock washer and a washer on the 2-inch bolts. Now there's 1-inch bolts. Those are the short ones. The 1-inch bolts get washers and nuts, but the 2-inch long bolts get just lock washers and washers. And you actually want to have these, and you can keep them in the baggie or what or not, I don't care, but you want to keep most of them down here and by the cart, because you're going to be under the cart and you're going to want to be able to get to them without moving as we're clamping this thing up. So then the next step is, and this to me, this is the easiest way to do it that I have found. You might have an easier way to do it, I don't know, but I'm just gonna show you the easiest way to me on how to mount this sucker up. Is I take 1 bolt, and again, make sure that your welded on nuts on the plate are facing down. So we are facing down. You're not up, facing towards down. And start 2 bolts on the outside holes, just 2. Just finger tighten them. Also, while I'm saying this, I forgot to mention, you might notice it might be a little tough because of the powder coating to start the bolts. One thing I'd recommend doing, just to make sure the threads will work easily for you, is I would start the bolts, come closer. I would start the bolts close. I would start the bolts on the backside, and then use your ratchet or something, or driver, and run through the back side. When you run the bolt all the way through the back side of it, it's gonna make threading it on the front side a lot easier. What it is there's powder coat on here, and that powder, they powder coat on the outside, and they can make it kind of hard to, for the bolt to start. So you wanna do that. So I'm barely starting these. If you can look on the bolt here, you know, I'm not even flush with this yet. What the point is, I gotta be able to have them started enough where they're not gonna come out, but I gotta be able to pull that apart like this. And you're gonna see why, because I'm gonna put this over the 1-inch tubing on the frame to make the mount a lot easier. So once you have one side like that, I don't care which side you do. You can do the left side, driver's side, you can do the passenger side. But you gotta make sure, one, is that your flat plate is facing backwards. That is backwards. You wanna mount it where your flat plate is facing that way. So I put my plate on the driver's side, and then make sure you grab your other mounting plate as well. And I'm gonna sit this down here. And this is what I'm gonna do. I gotta tell you what, Keely, come to this side. And if you gotta use the light, you can. So, you see the 1-inch tubing right here in the frame. Can you see it very well? Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm spreading this clamp just like so, and I'm sliding it over. You might have to put the hitch at an angle, but I'm sliding it over. And now I'm just gonna hold up the other side of the hitch with my other hand, and I'm just gonna simply start the bolt. Start it on, and now these are finger tightened, so good to go. And while we're here, make sure your wires still that are hanging are just on top of the hitch. They're not underneath. Make sure the wires aren't underneath the hitch. Make sure they're on top. If you want to put them behind the sway bar back here to make sure they're out of the way, then you're good to go. Next, so now like all these should be finger tight, so I should just be able to let it hang free. Now we take the other plate mount and we're gonna slide it over the other 1-inch tubing. Again, making sure that the welded on nuts are facing down. So then I'm gonna take my hardware. So, okay, so now everything's finger tight. If you look right here, do you see the frame, cross member on the frame right here? We want the plates to butt up against that piece. Now you gotta be careful. If you don't have it tight enough, that the plate can go above the cross member. You don't wanna go above. You wanna get these kind of snug, and then it needs to be right against that frame piece. Snug them up a little bit, and while you're doing this, while you're tightening the plate down, make sure you're going even. You don't want to all the way tighten one side of the plate and then go over here to the other side of the plate and try to tighten down. You got to make sure you're staying even. The point obviously is to keep the plate as square, as flat as possible on top of 1-inch tubing. So it looks like we can go, now that my plate's getting a little more snug, it looks like I'm hitting that cross member now. So now I can just, and this can hold pretty firmly. So you also got to make sure that the other side is touching too. And then now that side's tight. Then we go over here. But yeah, if you see, if you film like right here, Keely, that way, you'll see how like the plate, it looks square. It's not leaning from one side to the other. The mounting plate is flat, and that's kind of the purpose. Otherwise, it's not gonna be mounted down as well. Next part, grab the 4 1-inch bolts. They will have 2 washers and a nut on each bolt. Then grab your 9/16 wrench. Grab your hitch receiver. Okay, now this is what makes our hitch special, is that it's adjustable. So if you have a license plate mount, you can throw it on there, throw it on there. And now I can mount the plate right below it. For the video purposes, let's just mount it to the higher holes just to show you how that looks. So I'm just gonna take 1 bolt, 1 washer, highest hole, and I'm making sure my hitch is square. Not square this way. level. I'm making sure it's level. So that looks good there. So now I can tighten it down. Then we want to make sure it's square on perfectly center on the frame or on the bumper, which it actually looks like it's pretty freaking dead on. So it's, as you can see, you know what I mean by a straight line up and down. Again, the way to change that is not the 4 bolts I just did. It's to loosen the clamp, one of the clamps, and move one of the clamps forwards to make sure it's actually even. That's literally how simple it is to install the receiver. The last part of the instructions is just to zip tie the wires back up. So I'm gonna go back under here. Now this is up to you how you want to do it. If you want to, go in here and zip tie all this to the top of the hitch. You can, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to zip tie, if you can do it all on top of the hitch. You can zip tie all the way back up here on this 1-inch tubing. It's totally up to you for the video purposes. I'm just gonna bundle all this up right here. I'm gonna zip tie that separately first. Then I'm gonna cut that. Then I'm gonna sit this on top. And zip tie there. Again, if you don't want the look of that, and you don't want the zip tie to be on your pretty nice hitch, you can zip tie the wires all back here in the 1-inch tubing again if you want to. But now it's out of the way,